to meeting number 25 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Based on the Board of Internal Economy, I would like all the members to adhere to the following health protocols. Maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from others. Wear a non-medical mask unless seated, and preferably wear a mask at all times, including when seated. Maintain proper hand hygiene by using the hand sanitizers provided in the committee room, and regularly wash your hands well with soap. As the chair of this committee, I will enforce these measures, and I thank you all for your cooperation. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House of Common Order of January 25th, 2021. I would like to outline a few rules to follow. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You may speak in the official language of your choice. At the bottom of your screen, you may choose to hear floor audio or in English or French. With the latest Zoom version, you do not need to select a corresponding language channel before speaking. The raise hand feature is on the main toolbar should you wish to speak. A reminder that all comments should be addressed to the chair. When you are not speaking, your microphone should be muted. The committee clerk and I will maintain a speaking list for all the members. Today, we will be resuming our study on the labor market impact assessment under the Temporary Foreign Workers Program, and we will be hearing from the witnesses. I would like to welcome all the witnesses for appearing before the committee and giving us the time as we go through this study. Today, in this panel, we will be hearing from Manitoba Trucking Association, being represented by Terry Shaw, Executive Director, Greg Erdit, Vice President, J Transport Limited, Scott Kinley, Chief Executive Officer for Gladstone Transfer Limited. We will also be hearing from Deloitte Law Group Professional Corporation, being represented by Andrew Carvajal, lawyer and the partner. We will also be hearing from Union Day Producer Agricolas, being represented by Marcel Grolio, General President, and Denise Roy, Treasurer and Director of Finances and Workforce. I would take this opportunity to welcome all the witnesses today on behalf of all the members. All the witnesses will be given 5 minutes for their opening remarks, and then we will go into the round of questionings. So with that, I would request Manitoba Trucking Association to please proceed. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
If I may, thank you, Madam Chair. Is it 5 minutes per or 5 minutes on behalf of the association?
Yeah, you will have 5 minutes in total for Manitoba Trucking Association, so you can split your time among your colleagues.
Okay, well, if my colleagues are okay with it, I'll go first. And thank you very much to everybody for having us today. My name is Terry Shaw. I'm the Executive Director of the Manitoba Trucking Association. The Manitoba Trucking Association represents over 300 companies in the Manitoba trucking industry, and the MTA is a proud member of the Canadian Trucking Alliance, who represents over 4,500 companies in the Canadian trucking industry. On behalf of the board and membership of the MTA and the CTA, I appreciate being afforded time today to address the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration so that we can provide some insight into labor market impact assessments and the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. In opening today, I would also like to acknowledge the partnership that the MTA and all CTA members have with Trucking Human Resources Canada, Trucking Human Resources Canada, or THRC. THRC is the National Sector Council for the Trucking and Logistics Workforce in Canada. Much of the labor market information I hope to be speaking to today came to us from THRC, and of special note to today's discussion, I refer all committee members to THRC's Temporary Foreign Worker Program Review, as was said report from August of 2018. And while the report was published a couple of years ago, the themes and recommendations contained within the report remain relevant today. A copy of the report was sent to our committee contacts in advance of today's discussion. High-level feedback captured on the program during those discussions came under the following headings: processing times, consistency of service, processing fees, work permit renewable times, and application requirements. And from those high-level feedback categories, the following recommendations were suggested. The first being a trusted employer or a fast-tracking process. A consistent point across the country was the need for a trusted employer vetting process to expedite and streamline the LMIA process. The second key recommendation was for the applications to reflect the realities of the trucking industry. The application form and content are not reflective of the realities of the Canadian trucking industry. Notable issues with the application included the compensation structure and reporting requirements, job advertisement and recruiting requirements, and the complexity of the application process, which leads many employers to seek legal aid and third-party advisement. The third key recommendation was process improvements. Some of those have been made since the report was published, and so we want to acknowledge that and thank those involved for making those process improvements. Some outstanding suggested improvements are ensuring that program officers are familiar with the trucking industry, setting realistic and standardized processing times for program applications, linking processing fees to service standards, and considering a set fee per application rather than per number of positions. And the last recommendation, which again was consistent across the country, country's roundtable sessions, was there are inconsistencies at the provincial level regarding provincial nominee programs that support a path to permanent residency. It is being proposed that the federal government, with our provincial government partners, take a lead in supporting a streamlined and consistent approach to permanent residency for foreign workers at the national level. And so that I don't utilize all our time, I will end this by leaving the committee with this thought. Making the above changes will not just benefit the Canadian trucking industry. It will benefit those that our industry seeks to employ. It will benefit our government partners tasked with oversight of this program. Most importantly, process improvements that happen to benefit trucking benefit the entire Canadian supply chain, which is the foundation of our country's economic success. So I'll leave that as my opening remarks, and I thank you, folks.
Would someone else, you have a minute, would someone else from the Manitoba Trucking Association like to speak, or we are?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is, good afternoon, my name is Scott Kinley, CEO of Gladstone Transfer Limited, a rural Manitoba-based trucking company in Gladstone, Manitoba company. My company was started in 1947 by my grandfather and incorporated in 1973, making me the third generation at the helm of the company. As you are aware, our industry is struggling to fill seats with drivers. The profession of a Class 1 over-the-road driver is not a profession the youth of today in Canada are embracing. In countries overseas, there are significantly more people content with the profession as a professional driver. These drivers from overseas are looking for opportunities to bring their families and settle in Canada. This helps both the employee and the employer. I see a few challenges with the current LMIA program. First being advertising criteria. The 30-day advertising requirement is redundant on what we do as a company year-round. This adds 30 more days to the application process. The fee of $1,000 per application is fine, however, should come with some sort of guarantee as each
Mr. Kinley, sorry for interrupting. Time is up. We will. Okay. You will get an opportunity to talk further when we go to the round of questions. If for any reason, if there is something at the end you think you have not been able to say, you can always send us a written submission. Now we will move on to Deloitte Law Group Professional Corporation, and I would request Mr. Andrew Carvajal to please take the floor. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee for inviting me today. I'm an immigration lawyer and partner at Deloitte Law Group, a firm dedicated to the exclusive practice of Canadian immigration, refugee, and citizenship law. I'm appearing today to speak about the Temporary Foreign Worker Program as someone who has been helping employers of all sizes navigate this program for almost a decade. I want to start by saying that I do value the role played by labor market impact assessments in Canada. While foreign workers are crucial to our economy and labor force, I do agree that Canadians should have first choice in domestic job opportunities. I'm also thankful for the work of Service Canada employees in processing these applications, and I have been particularly impressed that during COVID-19, Service Canada employees were able to quickly go back to regular processing times and even improve on them recently with the rollout of the online submission pilot. The painful part of bringing a foreign worker these days, as far as processing times are concerned, is mainly visa processing, but not the LMIA stage. I want to address three things that could be improved to make it easier for employers to staff positions that lack the right talent in Canada. The first one is transparency in LMIA guidelines and decision-making. Unlike IRCC, which publishes incredibly detailed manuals and instructions, online LMIA guides include very basic information that makes it exceedingly difficult for self-represented employers to navigate this process. I know this because we are often retained to represent employers who have failed on their own. LMIAs are some of the most technical applications that we work on. I have learned the art of preparing them from trial and error, from hearing about experiences of immigration colleagues, and from reading from ESDC's heavily redacted internal guidelines when they're made available through access to information and privacy requests. The ESDC website makes LMIAs look like a simple process that allows the employer to make many decisions. But in reality, officers follow incredibly detailed scripts and guidelines telling them what an employer should and should not do. And these manuals should be accessible to the public to make this process more transparent. My second suggestion has to do with LMIAs from an employer who's looking to retain a worker in the same position after the expiry of the work permit. Right now, employers are required to start the process from scratch and advertise the position like they did before. Perhaps we can develop a system where employers in certain industries known for continuous labor shortages can apply for a simplified LMIA for the same position, an employee. I like the trusted employer program that many witnesses have been discussing. And something that would also assist significantly in this regard is the extension of the duration of every single LMIA to a work permit of 2 years. Right now, most low-wage LMIAs, the work permits are limited to 1 year, forcing employers to invest significant resources in the same process every year. In addition, if an employee is eligible and intends to transition to permanent residence, the 1 year is never sufficient time to apply. And on that topic of transition to permanent residence, I want to make my third suggestion. Most federal and provincial economic programs for permanent residence are designed for individuals with professional or technical work experience. Yet more than 70% of LMIA work permits are issued to low-skilled workers. This means that the workers that we lack the most in Canada have no path to permanent residence. Now, on April 14, the government made one of the most exciting announcements that I remember as an immigration lawyer, was the introduction of new temporary permanent residence pathways for essential workers and international graduates. However, the rollout of these programs could have been more responsible and organized. All we found out was that new programs will open in less than 1 month with very limited quotas and no information on the required documents or forms that need to be submitted. This resulted in a complete frenzy of people booking English tests, medical exams, and ordering police certificates, not knowing if they will be required or not, just to try and make the quota before it fills up. Because of this, there are no more available English tests in Ontario until December of 2021. This means that the only individuals who will get to apply under these new programs are those who had the luck to book a language test right away because they could afford to look for one all day, or those who already had a test result before because they were preparing to submit an application under another program, or they already have an application in course. So the very coveted spots will likely be taken by people who already had other paths to permanent residence, and not the agricultural workers, not the truckers, the cleaners, the grocery store attendants, and other semi-skilled workers. And the worst part is that it not only affects those who will not be able to apply on time, but also others who need to book English tests or medical exams for other immigration programs. So if this had been planned better and released earlier with clear instructions, this exciting announcement would not have been so bittersweet. Once again, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to speak on this important subject as a professional in the field.
Thank you, Mr. Carvajal. Thanks for your opening remarks. We will now move on to Mr. Grolier, General President and representing Union de Producer Agricolas. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Marcel Grolot. I'm the head of the Union des Producteurs Agricoles.
Your microphone closer to your mouth so that it is easier for the interpreter.
Oui.
Mr.
D'accord.
Clerk, so that we can check if there is interpretation available, and keep the microphone closer to your
Alors,
mouth.
Can you hear me now? This is the interpreter interpreting Mr. Marcel Groslot. I'm on the English channel. Can you hear me? Yes, good. So I'll start again. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, my name is Marcel Groslot.
Can the interpreters get this sound?
This is the English channel. This is the interpreter. I'm on the English channel. English channel.
Oui, ça fonctionne.
This is the English channel. This is the interpreter. The interpreter can hear Mr. Marcel Groslot, and she is on the English channel.
I believe the matter is resolved as long as
Okay.
Monsieur Groslot prière de
Mr. Groslot, please keep the mic close to your mouth. They're as close as possible. Thank you.
Talk back. So you can please start. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much, Madam Chair of the committee, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is Marcel Groslot. I'm the head of the Union des producteurs agricoles du Québec. We represent 29,000 farms in Quebec. With me is Mr. Denis Roy, as an immigration consultant with the UPA. The first thing we want to tell the Government of Canada is that agricultural temporary foreign workers are essential for the agri-food sector and for Canadians' food security. The pandemic has made everyone realize just how important they are, and I believe this is now clearly understood by all federal departments and agencies across the country. With so many issues and decisions to be made during the pandemic, farm temporary foreign workers regularly find themselves slipping through the cracks. And today, there's still many problems with regard to COVID testing, which temporary foreign workers have to administer themselves while they're in quarantine. The hiring of a Toronto company to provide testing services in Quebec was a disaster. So we hope that today's announcement made by Ms. Bibot will fix the situation, which has been very painful for Quebec's agricultural employers, but also for foreign workers. Now, I've passed that message, and now I want to talk more specifically about LMIAs. Now, there are 2,500 producers who have labor shortage challenges. For 40 years, until 2015, the UPA was the government's partner as it received the applications from Quebec's agricultural employers. And today, we help 1,500 employers fill out the very heavy paperwork burden involved with the 3,000 applications made each year. So we know this file well. In Quebec, the unemployment rate is currently 6.4%, the lowest in the country, yet farm production is growing at 8.7% per year. And in some regions, such as Chaudière-Appalaches, which is in the middle of Quebec, the unemployment rate is close to 4%. So we expect this labor shortage to continue for at least 10 years. So it's not surprising that the number of temporary foreign workers in Quebec is going up by 10% every year. And we know the number of temporary foreign workers will only go up, and therefore we need to review the paperwork. Employers would rather hire the same people every year for the same period and for the same type of work. So why not allow producers to file one application, which would be good for 2 seasons or 2 years? This would be a real and very quick way to reduce the paperwork for employers, for workers, and for government officials. This change would reduce delays and all the time wasted at each and every of the many steps along the way. For producers, they're already under a lot of stress, and the mountain of paperwork does not help. Every little hiccup in the process can delay the arrival of a worker, or worse, will increase the risk that a worker will not arrive at all. Now, clearly, we depend on the weather, and we can't control the weather. As for streamlining the application process, we made recommendations to the department in 2019 to shorten the LMIA form. As far as we're concerned, at least 24 questions on the form could be removed, and this would shorten the form from 12 to 6 pages. Currently, employers and workers have to deal with 3 different programs. We in Quebec have a clear proposal. The 3 programs should be merged into one designed on the agricultural component. This would simplify things, and it would help if we removed the list of eligible agricultural products. It's enough to use the definition of primary agriculture in the Immigration and Refugee Protection Regulations. We had to wait a good 10 years before maple syrup production was included on this list. Do we need to remind you that agriculture in Canada includes many, many family farms? The UPA works hard to maintain and grow sustainable farms with a human face. Nevertheless, the greatest challenge for these small businesses is access to the workers they need to harvest their crops. Small farms are not in a position to offer a 40 or 50-hour work week to a temporary foreign workers. The rules for farm programs should be changed so that producers can share workers. This is something that could be easily done with dairy or livestock farms. For example, a worker could share his time between 2 businesses depending on the needs and priorities of each employer, such as doing the morning milking on one farm and the evening milking on another. Of course, these farms would have to be located close to each other.
Mr. Grollo, your time is up.
Alors, en conclusion, les travailleurs agricoles sont absolument...
In conclusion, temporary foreign workers are absolutely essential.
Time is up.
Il faut simplifier ces programmes.
You will get an opportunity to talk further in the round of questioning. We will now move to our first round of questioning of 6 minutes each. We will start with Mr. Soraya. Mr. Soraya, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses to coming forward with their issues. My first question is to anybody can take it. One hand, the government is saying that we will fast track immigration for TFW like farm workers. Many blue collar categories are also on so-called expedited list of permanent residents. On the other hand, they are declining applications stating that applicant may not return to their country. Are your client experiencing a similar situation? We can take it from anybody, from the large law firm to anybody else can answer the phone.
I can certainly address that, Madam Chair, if you wish.
Yes,
you go ahead.
Yes, there's definitely programs in place to make sometimes the LMIA process faster for some essential occupations in terms of when it comes to recruitment and also the processing of the work permit. But we are seeing, as MP Soraya is pointing out, many issues with refusals of work permits, particularly in some visa offices. Applications are sent, for instance, from countries such as India and Pakistan, some of the other Southeast Asian countries. And in many times, it is because of this issue of fear. The officer is concerned that the applicant might not return to their home country after the expiry of their work permit. If there were clear paths to permanent residence for these individuals, then I think it would be easier to make an argument that there's a way for them to stay and this should not be a concern. And I think that's one way that this could be addressed. And also, I mean, if it really depends on the visa office, and we do find in some visa offices the required experience that you have to show, or what you need to show to be able to have a work permit approved, seems to be much higher than in others. And I mean, whether that should be that way, I mean, it's hard for me to tell. I mean, and there's some countries where a lot of people might include documentation that might be falsified, or there tends to be documents that are not as legitimate as in other places. But I do agree that it's constantly a concern that people are not going to leave Canada at the end of the stay. And if we need these people and we need them continuously, then we should create programs for them to stay. And then officers are not going to be concerned about this as much.
Andrew, thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts on the same question? Then I have something else. Andrew, maybe you can answer this question as well. Immigration Outpost is ignoring the fact that farmers have gone through an LMIA process and are using an extended power to ask identical or extended questions in the immigration process. Are your clients experiencing anything similar?
Excellent point, and I'm glad that you bring this to the attention of the committee and that it has been brought to your attention. We are seeing that. We are seeing some visa posts asking for documentation from the employer, not only agricultural, trucking a lot as well. A lot of documents from the employer, a lot of financials, a lot of evidence of whether they're operating or not. And these are things that should have been dealt with at the LMIA stage. Not to mention that a lot of employers don't feel comfortable providing this to an employee to then send with their work permit application. We have been noticing this a lot, especially in some visa offices.
Different question from the different. Two of the transportation company earlier this morning called me from the GTA issues. Simply they're saying is the LMIA program doesn't work. Most of the time the application is denied. It's too costly. It's too long. At the end of the day, the result is the same. Most of the time, they end up hiring the student driver, the international student. They get the A to Z license, I suppose, and the insurance has gone through the roof, and they are having a difficult time hiring drivers with the experience, with the mature, with those people who can help them. You have any thoughts on from that issue, please? Andrew, you can answer the question.
Sorry, was it for me or was it for the people from the trucking industry?
Anybody can answer it. This is a similar situation for you and them as well.
Okay.
You can answer it.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't know as much of what like trucking employers need to do. I do see, I mean, we've done a few LMIAs for trucking. I mean, we have been successful in those. I find that the most challenging part with those kinds of applications is actually the work permit from where we're bringing people. But I think probably my colleagues who are from these industries might be able to speak more about this.
Anybody from the Trucking Association can answer it if they're having the similar situation. Go, Terry, go ahead, please.
Can I? Yeah, thank you very much. We would echo those comments again. We understand there needs to be some rigor within the system. Mm-hmm. And we don't dispute that at all. But once you're in, again, that trusted trader concept or that trusted employer concept should be put in place as well. And again, Mr. Carvajal spoke to it very succinctly. The process itself is overly complex. It's very complex, which again.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Shaw. Your time is up. We will come. So we will now move on to Mr. Sidhu. Mr. Sidhu, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being with us this afternoon. Mr. Kinley, your time was cut short, and I'm very interested to hear your thoughts and recommendations. So if you'd like to take a couple minutes to finish off your thoughts here, I wouldn't mind hearing what you have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sidhu. My comments echoed what Mr. Shaw had in his opening remarks. Advertising criteria being one of them. The 30-day advertising requirement is redundant of what we do as trucking companies throughout the year. And this simply just adds 30 more days to the application process. The fee of $1,000 is fine per application, however, should come with some form of a guarantee or some coaching along the way to make more positive outcomes for the LMIAs. A good suggestion would be that have a bank of applications, 1 to 10 drivers for $1,000 or some set fee. Application processing times can take in excess of a year. The last successful LMIA we had was 18 months prior to COVID. Status updates would be a great idea. People need to clear up loose ends in their home countries. Drivers that are coming from overseas need to sell their homes and the contracts they're under for employment. cars, families, et cetera, et cetera. So some form of status updates would be greatly appreciated. And lastly, audits and audit turnaround time. My company's been subject to 3 audits over the years. This is very welcome by our company. It's what keeps us above board. The first was a challenge due to the officer's lack of knowledge with transportation. So perhaps individuals with more background in transportation doing these audits. The second went without a hitch. It was a very simple process, but that officer had a family member who was a truck driver. So she was very well versed in transportation. And the third is our third audit has been pending for over a year. COVID, of course, came into play with that. However, we have zero guidance or help. We don't know where to go. We don't know who to contact to see if this is being worked on. So we're at a standstill again. Our advertising keeps relapsing or lapsing, and then we have to start from scratch again. So the audit process needs to be streamlined to help us move forward. In the end, we have a great opportunity in Canada to strengthen our workforce by by fine-tuning the program and bringing people over to Canada that want to be part of our great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinley, for sharing your thoughts there. And my question to the Manitoba Trucking Association, can you please detail what concerns, if any, that your association may have if hypothetically the program switched to a more sectoral approach where TFWs are not necessarily tied to an employer? Any thoughts on that? Mr. Shaw or Mr. Kinley?
Sure. Yeah, I'll address. Again, I would defer to Mr. Kinley or Arndt. What I would suggest is there's a fine balance, and we want to bring over employees that will connect with not only our industry but the employer that brings them over, that hosts them. That said, we do understand the need for transition. So I don't have a real firm answer in that regard. And so Greg or Scott, if you folks have some information on that you'd like to share, that is a challenging situation, sir.
I'm not sure I understood the question. I would try to help out with that if I can.
Sure. I mean, right now, I think TFWs are tied to their employers. Would you like to see an approach where we go with a sector-based approach rather than to the employer, where the TFW is tied to the employer?
I still not quite sure. I've had a little trouble hearing you.
That's okay. Mr. Kinley has his hand up there. I'm running out of time, so I just want to make sure we get on the record.
Thank you. That's a very good question. Being tied to an employer would go part and parcel with the investment that our company or any company in Manitoba or Canada would be making, investing in these people to come over. The costs with flights, with training, especially with our mandatory entry level training program for obtaining a Class 1 license in Manitoba, that can be in excess of $8,000 to get a driver's license. When we lay out contracts with TFWs coming over using the 1 year or 2 year model, it's an opportunity for that company to bring some value to that investment from that person. So the ability for a successful LMIA or TFW to, I guess, jump ship as soon as they get to Canada really puts an economic strain on the trucking companies that have invested in these people to come over. So thank you. That's a great question.
Thank you for that, Kinley. Madam Chair, how much time do I have left?
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, this question is a long one, but I just wanted to address Mr. Grolo's concerns, about what's happening in terms of testing of farm workers, and I know Minister Bibeau and Minister Mendocino are working extremely hard in their respective portfolios, and I do agree with Mr. Grolo that Minister Bibeau's announcement today is very welcome. It's in regards to a new provider, Dynacare, who is already well established in Quebec to help with testing services for TFW. So I just wanted to put that there as well. So thank you so much for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sidhu. We will now move on to Madame Normandin. Madame Normandin, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of the witnesses for being here. My questions are mostly for Mr. Grolo and the UPA representatives. Mr. Grolo, the quarantines lasted much longer than the 14 days last year, sometimes up to 30 days. The $1,500 given to the workers, was that enough to compensate them for that? Well, the producers, can the witness please hold the mic close to his mouth because the interpreter can't hear very well. The sound is a bit fuzzy. Thank you very much. We were surprised by the announcement in the last budget, which is that $1,500 that amount would come down to $750 per worker. We don't quite understand that given the current situation. Thank you. Now, the length of the visas, you said you'd like to double that time frame to 2 years. The Bloc is suggesting 3 years. You say that companies like to have the same workers come back for the same type of work. Nothing really justifies the fact that an LMIA lasts only 1 year, given the predictability of the demand, right? Absolutely. When the program was first rolled out, we wanted to make sure that the workers would not take jobs away from Quebec or Canadian workers. That was a legitimate thing. But today, given the low unemployment rate, there are no extra workers to take up these farm jobs. And everywhere, these farms are putting out signs, we're hiring. There is a huge shortage of workers in the region. So back then, that may have been legitimate, but not today. We have to lighten the paperwork and we have to lengthen the contracts because these workers are coming over, but they're not taking jobs away. They are filling empty jobs. So we are proposing a different attitude and a different approach towards the management of this program. And as you said, these workers come back year after year for 2 or 3 years. Sometimes 500 or 600 workers come back to the same employer to do the same job. And in farming, we also have seasonal workers. It's the same paperwork that you have to go through to hire a temporary foreign worker or a seasonal worker. These are 2 different programs, but all of this has to be streamlined. Thank you very much. Now, with regard to the flexibility of work permits, you talked about small businesses which can't necessarily employ a worker for 40 or 50 hours a week. I've also heard that some people say that my season is short. I need apple pickers for a short time. I need workers for another type of work a month later for harvesting asparagus. So do you think it's a good idea to move workers from farm to farm? Yeah, that's a good idea. It already happens. But workers need a second permit to go to another business or another farm in another farm sector. So all of these things which are entrenched have to be changed. For instance, at the border, there is the Nexus program, which allows Canadians and Americans to travel quickly across the border. Well, why can't we have the same thing for temporary foreign workers or farm workers? They should have the same thing, which would make life easier for the workers, for employers, and it would certainly lighten the paperwork. And this would make it easy for workers to go from one farm to the next. Or it would make it easier to bring them to Canada in the first place and then for year after year. Thank you. You also said that the UPA helps 1,500 employers applying for 3,000 LMITs. Do you think farmers need more help to get through the application process to hire these foreign workers? Well, I would say that farmers have enough on their plates to begin with without having to fill out reams of paperwork. They don't only have labor shortages to deal with, but they have to deal with their livestock. They have to deal with health and safety issues. So they really need us to help them fill out all the paperwork. But if we could lighten that paperwork, it would help them throughout this process. Thank you very much. We also heard something from workers on this committee. Some of these workers were saying that we would like to improve, we would like to get extra training, but we can't do that under the current work permits, and this would help them get their Canadian permanent residency if they have more qualifications. Do you think that's a good idea, that these work permits allow workers to do extra training or studying on the side? Absolutely, that's a great idea. Some producers give extra training, but there are also other programs that are available, and workers need special training sometimes for some of the jobs they do, for instance, when it comes to breeding or when they work on dairy farms. So they are actually already given specific training on health and safety for the kinds of jobs they're doing. But it would be a great idea that outside of the work permit, they could do other type of training. Thank you very much. I think my time is up, Madam Speaker.
We will now proceed to Ms. Khan. Ms. Khan, you will have 6 minutes for your round of question. You can please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. We heard from some employers in previous panels whereby their worker, the temporary foreign worker, would come in, and they would come in year after year after year. And so there's a sense that perhaps what the government should do is actually create a system whereby people can actually come in permanently. And so Canada used to have a program in the immigration stream that would allow for high skill, low skill, medium skill, the full range of folks to come into Canada. Would you support for the government to bring back an immigration stream that would allow for the full range of work skills for people to get into Canada? So allowing for the repeat temporary foreign workers, for example, to access permanent residence. Perhaps I can start with Andrew on this first question.
Sure, thank you. I fully agree with that. I think one of the things that I find most problematic is that if you look at the breakdown of the people who are getting LMIAs, or the employers who are getting LMIAs and the positions, they're mainly for occupations that are low skilled. But unfortunately, most of the federal programs under the economic programs at the federal level are for skilled individuals, as are most of the provincial programs. So I think there's that big disconnect. They've been programs created for caregivers, for instance, and now there's the new pathways, which I think are an excellent start to do this. I think we need more of those, so those people can stay because they're very valuable to the Canadian labor force.
Thank you. With respect to temporary foreign worker programs, one of the issue is that the government recently announced that they would have a new application process for 90,000 spots for people outside of the different streams and who are already here in Canada, divided up amongst the different professions. I think that those spots are going to be highly sought after and will be filled up very quickly. I wonder whether or not if you have any thoughts about what the government should do with respect to that. And there's also confusion in the community as well as to how that process would work. In the case of caregivers, for example, some of them are already in a permanent residence application process, although it's very slow. Now they hear this, and so they're actually looking to sign off, withdraw from the other application and jump into this program, but there's no guarantee that they will actually get into this program. So I wonder, we're going to create all kinds of chaos and problems out there in the community. So with respect to that, what do you think the government should do? Should they be specifically allocating certain spots for certain streams? And in the event that people withdraw from one process to go into the other one, thinking this would be faster, what if they don't get in? What are the recourses then? Andrew, perhaps I can go to you as well.
Sure. I think advance notice would have made a big difference. I mean, if we had been able to know, and our clients would have known that they had to write English tests in advance, and they were able to get, because it's the first time that we see this non-skilled people being able to apply for permanent residence. And unfortunately, in 3 weeks, it's impossible for them to go and write an English test. So the people who are going to end up applying are the ones who already apply under another program, or they were already going to apply under another program. So I think notice would have been crucial, telling us a little bit about what is going to be included in the application so people are not hoarding resources like medical tests and things like that. And maybe what you're suggesting, which is for these pilots, for this new programs, making it so that if you've already applied under another program, you're not eligible unless you withdraw your application. And that way we don't find the 40,000 spots for international graduates or the 30,000 spots for essential workers taken by people who already applied under something else, but they want to try their chances to see whether this happens faster, because I have a lot of clients who are going to be doing that.
Yeah, I have a huge worry for people who withdraw from the other program because they are, they think that they've been stuck. In the case of caregivers, by the way, the government has not prioritized their processing. That is the truth of the matter. And people have been waiting desperately to reunite with their loved ones. And now they may well actually be out of luck on both ends if they withdraw from the other program. There's got to be some sort of process to ensure that these people don't end up getting caught out in that way. And so from that perspective, if people did withdraw and they try to get into the new one and they can't get into the new one, what sort of recourse do you think the government should provide to them? Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a difficult one, but I think mainly would be just restricting these programs from people who might have been able to apply under others, or maybe just doing quotas, as you were mentioning, by occupation. So that way, at least we can protect different occupations, because I'm just afraid that of those essential workers, many which are very important, like agricultural workers, truckers, people who work at convenience stores or grocery stores, they're just going to be taken by the ones who are probably professional and they had a chance to apply under other programs. So I think this is one way that the inventory could be managed in a way that allows opportunities for those that didn't have them before.
The Horticultural Council, the Canadian Horticultural Council, has reported difficulties for temporary foreign workers crossing borders in order to get a hold of Switch Health, the company contracted out by the federal government to administer the day 10 COVID tests after arrival, which forces them to quarantine for an additional 2 weeks and prevent them from working. From the clients in which you represent, Andrew.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Your time is up. We will now move on to Mr. Seaback. Mr. Seaback, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. Based on the time, we have to end this panel at 4:30. So, Mr. Seaback, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Great, thank you very much. So many questions, so little time. I want to quickly start. Terry, you had talked about the trusted employer vetting, and I know that's been brought up by a number of other people. Tell me how that looks, because from my experience, being a member of parliament, dealing with lots of immigration cases, this is of critical importance to a lot of employers. So how would you actually see this, envision this being run? And then Andrew, maybe you could comment as well.
Thank you for the question. Again, without getting into super specific details, what I can suggest is all of our members deal with banks, and once they go through the initial credit application process, they don't redo it every time they want to access their line of credit. CBSA and other federal government-run programs have trusted trader type programs where once you go through the initial vetting process, you don't redo it every time you cross the border. There are annual or regular audits. If something changes with your business, then you have to make a new submission or alter your information, but you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every time you make an application.
I think the way that I see it is that employers are already put through the ringer when they're doing an LMI application in terms of proving that they have the money to pay for the person, that they're legitimate, that they're operating, and they have to do recruitment too, right? So if they have to go through this again, especially if this is done in a way that specific industries are allowed to have this simplified procedure, then we already have guarantees that the employer is legitimate. We know that those industries have a lack of people. And I mean, there could even be a built-in audit process like there is for the global talent stream, for example, where employers have gone through this and then they've been vetted. So it's much easier for them to just apply again. I think that's kind of like the way that I see it. And again, it could be specific to certain industries like the global talent stream works.
Right. Okay. I see, Terry, you've put up your hand. Do you want to jump back in?
Just one last quick point. Thank you. Again, there are other independent agencies that you can utilize to help determine best practice. Employer of choice through Trucking HR Canada. Again, trusted trader programs through the federal government, certificate of recognition, safety standards. All of those speak to corporate culture and can help inform a trusted employer style program.
And I know I have very little time, and you may have commented on this, but people are talking about the challenges with the 1 year and the renewal. If you were to build this program, how long would you want this LMIA to last before you had to reapply? And if it's the same person that you want to keep, what should that look like?
Andrew.
Sure. I mean, they give 3 years to international graduates after they finish their studies, right? With an open work permit for any employer. Why not give 3 years to people who have an employer and have demonstrated a need in Canada?
Okay. And Marcel, I see you have your hand up as well.
I agree. So 2 years at least, there could be a process to renew, a simplified process if it's the same worker working for the same employer. If we want to follow up, that would be easy. So an easy, simplified process and a renewal process every 3 years.
Which I think all of us can agree on. A simplified path. Great. I think I'm probably out of time.
Okay. You had 10 seconds. We will now proceed to Mr. Shifke. Mr. Shifke, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to the witnesses for being here today and for lending their thoughts to a very important study. I think I'd like to begin my questioning with Mr. Shaw. Truckers make our country run, and I think that the pandemic has truly shown the importance of truckers in our country and how important they are. The question that I had for you, you were talking about the composition structure and the reporting requirements for the process that's currently in place, as well as some complexity issues. We really want to hear some concrete examples on how we can improve on the system. And I think your feedback would be valuable. And I'm wondering, in 1 minute or less, if you had any concrete examples on how we can improve on the composition, the structure, the reporting requirements, and perhaps reduce some of the complexity.
So I'll commit to providing a written submission on that because I can't get into it in 1 minute or less. I would also defer to my colleagues, Scott and Greg. But again, just to answer your question, some kind of help desk, user desk, something like that to help people through the process. People like Mr. Carvajal are welcome and a good resource, but it shouldn't take involving a lawyer to get through the process is where I'll leave it in the time I have.
Okay, and I want to thank you for submitting the document that you're going to submit with all of your ideas included in. I think that will be very helpful. Je voulais poser une question.
I would like to ask a question to Mr. Groslo. First off, thank you very much for sharing the situation of farmers in Quebec, especially the fact that there's a 6% unemployment rate in Quebec and an 8% growth rate in the sector. So there is a mismatch here that needs to be corrected. So, Mr. Groslo, you said that there might be a way to improve the process. So instead of filling up an application for 1 year, it could be good or valid for 2 years. Why 2 years instead of 3 or 5? Do you have a specific number in your head, or are you just looking for a longer duration? 2, 3, 5 years. If there's a way to really be able to trace the movement of workers, that would be important. Of course, the state wants to have some control over the mobility of those workers, where they go. At this time, it is too heavy a process. It must be simplified. Because I believe the idea is quite interesting. I have another question. You talked about the fact that you found 24 questions that could be easily removed from the form to have a simplified form, and you share that with the government of Quebec. Did you do the same with the government of Canada? Yes, indeed. It was part of a working group task that was... The working group was looking at how to simplify this form. If I may, I just would like to say, this is my last chance. Let's not forget that we are dealing with human beings here. So we have to be human when we deal with those human beings. We're not importing assets or goods. We're importing human beings. So we should treat them as such. Thank you very much.
Time I have left. This is for Mr. Cavajal. First of all, thank you for speaking to some of the challenges with the recent announcement that was made. We very much appreciate that and look forward to rectifying that for future announcements and perhaps working with you and others across the country to do that. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the things.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Shifke. Your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We will now move on to Madame Normandian. You will have 2 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
I was on mute. Thank you very much. Mr. Grolot, I may give you more time to respond, but I would invite you to send us in writing the list of questions that we could take out. This could be part of our recommendation. You talked about the assessment done on site to ensure the safety of workers. We know some money was announced in the last budget to increase this oversight, but in Quebec, this is a shared responsibility. So would you say that this same task is done by two different groups and this is not to the benefit of employers or employees? Yes, this is a very good point. We would like that an agreement be made between the two governments so that only one government be responsible. We would prefer that the government of Quebec be responsible of this assessment. Thank you very much. And under 1 minute, on the issue of more flexible work permits, would it be a good idea to consider permits that are not linked to one employer, but a work permit that would be linked to an industry or a region even? Because you mentioned it, the Bellechasse region has an unemployment rate that's a lot lower. The interpreter knows that the microphone is very far away from his mouth. This would allow us to not...
Closer to your mouth, please.
Oui.
Thank you.
Alors.
So, yes, I would say yes. We do not oppose the fact that in the agricultural sector, the work permit could be associated with several businesses. So it could be linked to an industry or even a region, perhaps? Yes. We have employees that come to pick apples, and after that, they go to cut down Christmas trees. Some employees come earlier and they pick asparagus, and later they go and pick up other vegetables. So we have very short seasons to pick our fruit and vegetables.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. We will now end our first panel with Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thanks very much. I'll just quickly go to Andrew to finish my last question. I wonder whether or not he's seen industries that he's represented face the issues that I raised. And then I'll go to Mr. Shaw on a different question.
Sorry, MP Kwan, I don't remember the question, but if it's related to specifically agriculture, then perhaps Monsieur Grolot might be a better at answering that.
Thank you. Yes, my question was basically about the problems with the border and the experience of that for folks. I wonder whether or not the problem's been fixed with regards to Switch Health.
So I wouldn't be able to speak so much about that.
Oui. Alors.
Well, later on this week, we will find out. We will get the details about the agreement that was concluded with the new business that will offer services in Quebec. So maybe later today or tomorrow, but we believe that it will be with Switch Aid.
I'm going to, Mr. Shaw, for one quick question. We all talked about pathway, and I think what is needed, though, is actually a permanent residence status initiative or stream from the government that targets the whole range of skills, high, medium, and slow and low skill. And so I wonder if Mr. Shaw can speak to that.
The only comment I would make is we agree. Again, the vast majority of our industry that utilize the program don't do so on a temporary or seasonal type basis. The people we are bringing to Canada, we are hoping to keep here in Canada as permanent employees. So I would agree that despite the skill level of transport truck driver, under the NOC system, that we are trying to bring these people here. And so a consistent and more effective path to permanent residency for these temporary foreign workers for our industry is desired, absolutely.
Ms. Kwan, you are on mute. Your time is up too. So we will end our first panel here. Thank you to all the witnesses for providing your important input towards this study. If there is anything you were not able to bring it today, you can always send in a written recommendation, written submission to the clerk of the committee, and we will take that into consideration. Will end, and I will suspend the meeting for a few minutes so that we can allow the witnesses for the second panel to please log in. Thank you.
Thank you for.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to the witnesses for appearing before the committee today. I welcome you to the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. all the witnesses will have 5 minutes for the opening remarks. Today, we have Wilma Pagaduan appearing as an individual. She's an advocate for caregivers and settlement workers. We are also hearing today from Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council, being represented by Mark Chambers, co-chair Agriculture and Agri-Food Labor Task Force, and also Mr. Cyr Couturier, the chair. We also have today from Lehal Law, Kamaljeet Lehal, barrister and solicitor. So on behalf of all the members, I welcome all the witnesses today. Everyone will have 5 minutes for the opening remarks. We will start with Wilma Pagaduan. You can please proceed. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wilma Pagaduan, and I thank you so much for this privilege. I came to Canada August 2007 under the Live-In Caregiver Program. My experience of having gone through the system myself has led me to become an advocate for these men and women and become their voice when their voices couldn't be heard. I am a settlement worker and most recently have been working with farm workers as well and have been seeing the most unthinkable experiences that migrant workers are going through, which has been further compounded by the pandemic. I have been organizing many town hall events relating to immigration and been engaged in a variety of IRCC consultation meetings for policy change. I am pleased to have the opportunity to share my recommendations with you today. LMIA, only a fraction of employers are exempted from LMIA. Majority of employers still have to provide an LMIA. Caregivers who are already in Canada should not be required to obtain a new LMIA if they wish to extend or renew their work permit and are working for the same employer. My recommendation is to completely remove the LMIA for applicants applying for extension of work permit working for the same employer. Education and English language criteria, I find it very discriminatory. If you will notice in the Agri-Food Immigration Pilot Program and the Atlantic Program in the low-skilled level and NOXI category, same as the caregivers, the educational criteria for these two pilot programs is only secondary education, whereas the caregiver program requires at least 1 year post-secondary education. The English criteria for these two pilots requires only CLB4, whereas caregivers requires to have a CLB5. Most of these caregivers are women, women of color, and women from Southeast Asian countries. My recommendation is to remove these two criteria for PR application. Open a separate public policy for program for the caregivers. I strongly suggest that IRCC must open a pathway similar to interim pathway that will accommodate those who fall into the crack and open it a longer than 1 year, so they will have time to gather documents from overseas. Many who are already here before the opening of the new pilot program will not be able to meet the criteria. These are men and women who are working in hospital settings, nursing homes. They are the frontline workers during COVID pandemic, day in and day out, never get a day off because of employment restrictions given by the employer. Some of these applicants have been in the caregiver program for 4 or 5 years, but have no pathway to permanent residence where they and their family members can be reunited. Agency is not an option because families, especially children, will be left behind. My recommendation is that IRCC will remove the cap and that the processing time should be 6 months only. I do have a question about the cap. The cap of 2,750 for the home child care program, who determines that cap? Did they conduct a study on that cap? And what base do they have? Is that based on the numbers of caregivers coming to Canada? Open work permit. Applicants from February 2019 under the interim pathway finally received their first acknowledgement of receipts when IRCC sent out massive AORs mid-March. My recommendation, they should be given an open work permit as soon as they open the application. This was the rule previously when an LCP applicant submitted their application. They were issued an open work permit so they can continue to work while their application was in process. This way, vulnerable temporary foreign workers can continue to work without risk of being exploited because they do not have money to cover basic necessities like food and shelter. Currently, there are many employers and other third parties who are exploiting these vulnerable workers because they need to maintain with an employer or because they have no other option for work. Note that these workers' health insurance also expires with their work permit, so they also do not have access to health care in these COVID times. Open work permit should also be granted to spouses and children whose PR application is already submitted to the IRCC to justify that Canada is indeed serious about family reunification. Amnesty. If the government is serious about meeting the shortage of manpower, my recommendation is that they should give amnesty to the undocumented individuals who are already in Canada. They are working in farms, factories, malls. They even clean government offices. Let them pay taxes for all the years that they have been here in Canada. Make a payment plan. Canada should follow the example of France, where applicants are given status and even citizenship. Band score, whether it is CLB4 or CLB5, IRCC should consider the application if the applicant is able to achieve the band score of CLB4 or 5, even if it is not an exact same composition based on the equivalency chart. We have clients whose family member passed away during the pandemic and studying after long work hours, and to deal with the loss of the family members and to deal with their own dilemma in Canada, it is so hard for them to study. My recommendation...
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Pagaduan. Your time is up. You will get an opportunity to talk further when we go into the round of questioning. We will now go to Ms. Lehal. Ms. Lehal, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. You can please proceed.
Thank you. As I said, I'm a lawyer and my primary area of practice is immigration law. Many of the immigration clients I represent are the most vulnerable in our community. For instance, I have advocated on behalf of out-of-status women, along with other stakeholders at policy roundtables created by this government. Recommendations were made for a fast-track process for these victims of violence, which were accepted, and we now have an expedited TRP for victims of violence. My personal contribution was the coding of FV to help recognize and expedite these applications. So I welcome the opportunity today to collaborate for the betterment of those who are the most vulnerable in our community. I'd like to share with you a couple of scenarios that my office has seen or has heard of which pertain to the topic of LMIAs. The first is regarding fees for LMIAs, and the second is regarding foreign workers who are injured while in Canada with a Canadian employer and the effect on their work permit status. On the first issue, what I'm about to share is not new, but it is important because essentially on a regular basis, my office receives phone calls from foreign nationals who have been charged illegal and extravagant fees to obtain an LMIA. We hear the all too familiar scenario of foreign nationals having paid fees in the tens of thousands of dollars, averaging around 40, 50 upwards. And this is usually an employer or consultant cohort that has charged these sort of fees. The monies are paid in cash, making it very difficult to prove that they were received by these individuals. After paying these monies, what we've heard from the people that are calling in, some of them are still being charged by the employer for the monthly employer remittances or made to work long hours to cover these remittances. Some are told that there's no work and they end up being compelled out of desperation into a fraudulent scheme whereby employer remittances are made but no actual work is done. The immigrant gets caught in a web of deceit by unscrupulous persons who are taking advantage of a system that places a lot of power and control in their hands. What is the recourse for these individuals who are usually in low-paying and low-skilled jobs? There is a complaint process to for example, the consultant disciplinary body, but unfortunately there's not much teeth to that body in terms of being able to do anything. Many immigrants are too afraid to report the complaint for fear of deportation or fear of their own safety. We recently had an individual share an account with us of the employer showing him a gun if he was going to take any complaints of what's been happening to him. We have seen recent enforcement efforts being made by CBSA to crack down on employers and consultants. And I just want to pause here and say there are many, many good employers, but there are those few that are taking advantage of the most vulnerable workers that are coming into Canada. And these people are sophisticated. So even if there's a crackdown and they're caught, what we are hearing is that they are simply opening shop again under a different banner to try and prey again like vultures. Perhaps this time, however, there are criminal proceedings being taken. There will be more of a deterrent effect. However, the concern I see is that while we have an enforcement process, this process is time-consuming in terms of investigative time and is reactive, responding to a crisis scenario. In my opinion, we need something that is more proactive, something that will take away control from unscrupulous consultants and employers. For instance, one of the local organizations in BC, Hope Welfare Society, approached me to suggest a novel idea of the ESDC perhaps taking an inventory of those foreign immigrants that are already in Canada and are looking for work and match them with genuine employers who are looking for workers. This would eliminate front-end extortion from unscrupulous individuals and help those that are already in Canada. I'm not sure if there's capacity to create something like this, and I would like to see it. I would see it benefiting low-skilled individuals and workers, but I think it's helpful to start rethinking how we're tackling this issue, brainstorming and finding a way that's more proactive to dismantle the illegal and opportunistic scheming that few individuals are utilizing. I know I only have a few more minutes. I just want to raise another scenario that I've seen is foreign workers who've been injured while working in Canada with the Canadian employers. These individuals end up in a workers' compensation process where they're usually helped to find work and rehabilitate and get skills to get back in the workforce. However, if they're not able to return to their pre-injury employer due to permanent functional impairments, they have to find another employer. Being disabled, it's harder for them to find an employer willing to go through the efforts of obtaining an LMIA.
Ms. Lehal, your time is up. You will get an opportunity to talk further when we go into our round of questioning. We will now move to Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council. Mr. Chambers and Mr. Couturier will share the time. You will both have together 5 minutes for your opening remarks. So you can please start.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for the invitation today.
Can you please hold the microphone closer to your mouth?
I will, yeah. Can you hear me now?
This is better.
Okay. My name is Cyr Couturier, and I'm the chair of the Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council. I'm an aquaculture scientist and chair of the aquaculture programs at Memorial University, as well as a director on many industry associations, including the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. I'm also a past president of some other national farmer associations, providing about $3 billion in GDP and 30,000 jobs to middle-class Canadians. The workforce needs of Canada's agriculture industry is something that CARC has been examining for more than 10 years. Through our focused labor market intelligence research, it is clear that the industry cannot continue to produce healthy, safe, and affordable food for Canadians, for global consumers, without ensuring workers are secured and in a place to do their jobs. The COVID pandemic has put a greater spotlight on this and confirmed that there is no more time to waste. We must work towards longer-term and systemic solutions to the persistent labor shortages of the agriculture industry is facing. CARC's labor market research has clarified that job vacancies are exceptionally high in agriculture compared to other industries, and resulted, for example, in 2018, according to our LMI research, of a loss of $3 billion in lost revenues to farmers. The inability of farmers to fill all of their vacant positions with either Canadian or foreign workers makes the business of food production in Canada very stressful and difficult. International workers come to Canada to work on farms and fill positions when Canadians can't be found. Although approximately 60,000 foreign workers are brought in each year, thousands of vacancies still persist, with 16,500 vacancies in 2018. In fact, workforce shortages are doubling every 10 years. The latest assessment indicates that the labor gap of Canadians available to work in the sector is 63,000 a year and is expected to grow to 123,000 by 2029. Businesses are just unable to fill the vacancies face excessive stress and production losses. Many report delaying expansion plans and foregoing operations, or securing a full team of workers is challenging for farm businesses at any time. It's especially challenging during the pandemic. Yet, the pandemic has highlighted that food production is part of Canada's critical infrastructure in maintaining the ability for food businesses to operate effectively, even during a global health crisis. It's critically important to us all. Food businesses continue to operate through the pandemic and thankfully have been designated as essential workplaces so that Canadian families can continue to eat homegrown fruits, vegetables, meat, seafood, dairy, and grains. However, keeping ag businesses operational has not been easy for either industry or government due to extensive labor shortages and unique workforce management challenges. COVID has highlighted not only how complex it is to maintain public health during a pandemic, but also just how important and complex it is to manage workforce issues in this sector of the Canadian industry. Labor-related shortages were exacerbated in 2020 due to the pandemic, and our recently released study on the COVID impacts of COVID-19 on labor were shown to cost primary agriculture $2.9 billion in lost revenue last year, simply owing to COVID-19 impacts. And I can forward that report if you're interested. COVID has certainly put a spotlight on the need for focused attention to address the persistent, pervasive issues of workforce shortages that continues to undermine the industry's ability to operate at full capacity. Industry continues to stress the need for stabilizing worker availability and providing support for farm business owners through the pandemic and beyond. The industry does rely on temporary foreign worker program to fill position vacancies when Canadian workers are unavailable. So the efficiency of Canadians' temporary foreign worker program is critical. Since the workforce challenges facing agriculture and agri-food sector are not temporary, the sector needs an integrated, permanent solution to this long-standing and growing problem, one that includes workable immigration pathways for agriculture and agri-food workers. The proposed pathway for permanency announced by the government just a few weeks ago maybe provide part of the solution for ag and agri-foods labor shortages, but other solutions may be needed. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mr. Mark Chambers. He's the co-chair of Canada's Agriculture and Agri-Food Labor Task Force, as well as vice president of the Canadian pork production at Santerra Farms Limited, family-owned business that focuses on pig production, as well as meat processing in Alberta, serving Canadian global customers. Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to everyone for allowing us to meet with you this afternoon and discuss this very important issue. During COVID, farms and food businesses have been struggling with extensive uncertainty about meeting their staffing needs.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Chambers. Your time is up. We allow 5 minutes to all the witnesses to provide their opening remarks. You can talk further as we go into our round of questioning. Now we will start with our first round of questioning, which is of 6 minutes each. We will start with Mr. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, you will have 6 minutes. You can please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. That's always the way it is with partners there. Someone gets all the time and the other guy doesn't get any time at all. Mark, did you want to just, don't take all my time, but you want to take a few seconds just to say what you were thinking that you wanted to leave with us? What was your message?
Well, my message is very similar to Sears. I mean, we need to have, it's not a temporary issue that we have with agriculture and agri-food. It's a permanent labor shortage, and we need to have solutions to create permanent solutions for this. So what I mean by that is we rely on the foreign worker program, overseas workers, to come in and augment the Canadian workforce. So we need to ensure that we've got good pathways to ensure that we can fill that labor need, to ensure we have a solid Canadian food production system in Canada. We don't want to necessarily rely on imports. I mean, we have a massive land base in Canada that we know we either got to produce the protein here or we've got to export it and someone else is going to produce it. So the idea would be to keep that production in Canada and ensure that we have a workforce that can grow those crops, grow those, raise those animals and process that meat when it comes to the end.
Thanks, Mark. And I was going to point that out. I mean, this is not a first-time shortage for labor. This has been a permanent shortage all along. And I guess the challenge I have, or the suggestions I need for you guys to tell us, is that we're talking about our food security of our country, and we really do need to figure this out because, Sierra, you talked about a loss of $3 billion, but I guess the challenge is, we start talking about food production. You guys are on the front lines. At the end of the day, if we don't figure out the labor piece, if you don't put food in the ground, you can't harvest it. If you don't, if you don't produce more, pork or fish or salmon, whatever it is, you don't get to harvest that if you don't have the resources to put it in. With that's a pretty fair assessment. So it's not just a loss of dollars, but it's a complete loss of production, which down the road could lead to shortages, correct?
Yes, absolutely correct. And I mean, actually, the past 12 months during COVID has really sent the message home to me. So I don't know if any of you have driven around car dealerships lately and tried to look at buying a new vehicle, like a new truck or something. They have very little on the lot. And I mean, we're relying on those cars being manufactured in Mexico or assembled in the US or wherever. and coming to Canada. But during COVID, with all the slowdown and the border issues, we've not been able to bring those in. Luckily, the borders have remained open to let food move north and south. But if we ever run into an issue where food cannot move north and south, we're going to be in real trouble if we don't have a solid food secure system in Canada. You're muted.
Of course I'm muted.
And the labor force.
And the labor force.
Absolutely. Listen, I couldn't agree more. I think, food security is one of those things that we need to be looking at and we should be doing. You guys talked about in some of your other briefing. I don't know if you mentioned it here, but I have seen in some of your previous briefing a dedicated workforce program per se. So, once again, you're suggesting that there would be something to play. We've had a lot of industries, quite frankly, that have said, listen, it's the same thing. We go forward every year, back and forth. This is a very critical industry, but you're looking at specifically something for your industry would be helpful. You did talk about a pathway to permanency, which we could talk about in a sec, but explain what you're thinking about in terms of a dedicated workforce program.
Well, we want to try and lose the stigma. I mean, there's two parts to ag and agri-food. There is the seasonal program where it's a seasonal due to the nature of the business. I mean, the crops are planted in the spring, they grow through the summer, and they're harvested in the fall, and that's the season. And a lot of seasonal workers come, and there's a need for that program. But there's also the year-round that we have, year-round on the fishery side, year-round on the livestock side, and year-round on the meat processing side. So that's a program we needed. We've talked about this in the past. A few years ago when I testified, we talked about a dedicated ag and agri-food workforce program where we lose the stigma of the temporary, because it's not temporary. I mean, our goal is to bring folks here and to, if they like Canada and we like them, is to create a pathway for them to become a permanent resident for a year round in Canada. And in the agriculture side, there are some programs that are available, and especially in light of the new one that just recently opened up as well. But the challenge on the meat processing side is we have a cap on the processing side. We're a cap of the percentage of farm workers you can have, and that really inhibits the ability to grow or maintain consistent production. I mean, the company I work for, Sunterra Farms, I mean, we have a meat processing plant in rural Alberta, Trocia. It's a small town. It's difficult to attract people to rural Canada, period. But when we bring in workers, they come, they settle in that community, they've grown that community. It's been a big benefit. And then once they're there for a year or two, they find that that's home, so they stay there. Trying to get people to move from a city to rural Canada is really difficult. So our goal is to make sure we've got a program that doesn't impede the ability of the businesses to grow or succeed. I mean, we grow hogs as well. A lot of hogs we send across the border and grow in the US. We'd like to grow more in Canada, but we can't raise more in Canada because we won't be able to process them in our plant because it's already at max capacity. And we can't grow that plant because we can't hire more workers from overseas because we're already at the 20% cap. What our goal would be to, if we could bring those people in, and as soon as they've all got a pathway to permanency as quickly as possible, is to remove them from the cap and continue to focus that way.
Thanks. I'll just note that I think it's so important if we're going to control and protect our supply chains that we need to look at a way that we can actually do that in Canada. Production is one of those things. We do sell a lot of raw products out of this country.
Mr. Ellison, your time is up.
I think we need to do a better job with production in country. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. We will now proceed to Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the presenters. Ms. Leal, you mentioned all those things to do with the LMIA fraud and the money gouging schemes that you are hearing, and I'm hearing the same thing, and I update the minister time to time. You mentioned ESDC. Anytime the employer is involved, I personally believe that doesn't matter what we do, they're going to find a way to gouge money from these vulnerable people. I'm sure you will agree with that as well, because this is how they found out. So, but when we look at how to stop it, we did some positive steps as a government. We put $40 million to incorporate a body that will govern those consultants that you talked, just like yours as a law society and mine as a professional engineers, and BC Land Surveyors is governed by its own peers. And we also brought in 27,232 that express entry draw, where the point level was dropped to 75, where almost everyone under the age of 30 with 1 year experience will get in, doesn't need all those LMIAs, and then 90,000 other things like 40,000 students that don't need LMIA, and then 30,000 essential workers from farm worker all the way to professionals, and 20,000 in the healthcare professional, starting with the housekeeping all the way to the doctors. There are some of the policies. Could you tell me how do you see this will help those vulnerable individuals, the policy like this, and what government should be doing moving forward? Should we bring in further policy like this, and also how we can improve the LMIA process?
Okay, yeah, so there, I acknowledge that there's been a number of initiatives by the government to address individuals who are struggling to find a pathway, and we did see that the situation where the marks to get in under the express entry were dropped. I think the difficulty that we find as council is that these initiatives spring up and we're not given much notice, and then we've got clients scrambling and trying to figure out who's going to fit in what scenario. So there's a real panic and trying to reach out to clients and say, okay, we think you qualify under this one or this one. And my concern is that while the numbers are, there's you've said the 90,000 pathway, those numbers are going to fill up very quickly. And there's still a huge group of people that are left out of it. There's a number of, I think one of the speakers spoke about undocumented workers, unfortunately, because they've been caught up in this whole scheming process, they end up being undocumented, that otherwise they were well-intentioned individuals. Not exactly sure what options are available to them, but they need to be addressed. I take note of the active enforcement steps that are being taken by the government, but I think we still need to think out of the box and come up with something that's more proactive. And I hear you, Mr. Dhaliwal, that unscrupulous employers will still find ways to sabotage the system, but part of that is educating people that are coming from regions. I believe, for example, if we look at the students that come in, the bulk of the students come in from India and from China. And I've traveled to India and I've seen the big signs up there about get to Canada, and they're huge and people are being misled. So some front end work in terms of just shedding the light on what the truth is in terms of options and immigrating to Canada is important. And then the workers that we have here that have gotten stuck in these schemes or otherwise that are not getting work, why not use them in terms of matching them up with some good employers, some sort of system? And the one system I was suggesting was using the EDS to match these potential workers with genuine employers. So, I mean, there's good work that's been done, but there's still a lot of gaps and that need to be addressed.
You mentioned the undocumented workers. I mean, before the COVID situation, escalated, Ms. Dillon and myself met with some of the refugees from claimants from Montreal. They came and they met us on the Hill, and they were able to speak perfect French and perfect English, and they've been working here for the last 10, 15, 20 years, but the case didn't get finalized. I'm sure you are getting similar cases like that. Would you suggest that government should have a similar plan, the one that we brought in for 90,000 people, to deal with those refugee claimants that has been here for a long, long time?
I understand the conundrum of the government in terms of, we see this from in some decisions where comments are made that, you've misused, you've stayed under the radar, you've misused our immigration process. But many of these people have been giving back but are being taken advantage of because they are undocumented. So I think there should be a pathway available to them to become, to get some status in Canada. And we have the H&C applications, of course, and they take a long time. And many of these people don't want to risk going that route because then they become known and they're worried about being deported.
How about these, what's called, let me see, the caregivers? We are bringing in a program, 6,000 application to fast track. Do you have enough time for them to get organized? And also on the 90,000.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Dhaliwal. Your time is up. We will now move on to Madame Normandian. Madame Normandian, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to all of our witnesses for being here. My first questions would be for Mr. Couturier and Mr. Chambers, especially Mr. Couturier, if the people you represent also work in the processing area, not only in farming itself. Mr. Chambers, you said that the limit of 10 or 20% of foreign workers is a problem, is an obstacle, and you said that we could fix that problem if we gave them permanent residency more quickly. So I'd like to hear you more about how to make that process faster. Do you think it would be a good idea to increase that cap, especially in situations where, really, in Canada, we have a very low unemployment rate in some areas?
Well, to answer that question is, I think it would be.
Can you please move the microphone closer to your mouth?
Excuse me. I personally think it would be a good idea to raise that limit, especially in areas where there's low unemployment, but also high unemployment. The reality is in animal processing or food processing, there are shortages in many parts of the country, and there's lots of unemployment as well. So how can we encourage Canadians to go there? That's going to be part of the solution. But I'll leave Mark talk about the limit.
Yes, I mean, I think increasing the limit would be important, and I mean, it's a way to get more folks in from overseas and get them on a pathway to permanency. It's very difficult when you've just got a small percentage of folks have got to come in. They've got to learn the Canadian system. They've got to take their English test and a lot of different things and assimilate into the Canadian communities. So having a small cap is very difficult to be able to get enough people through that. But I don't think it should be a free-for-all where it's wide open and there's no intent to create pathway to permanency. Our goal has always been, the farm worker program has always been a stepping stone to a pathway to permanent residency. But the cap has restricted that ability to get enough people through there. We've always worked on that premise, and we know we're not going to keep everyone. We know that. I mean, rural Canada is not for everyone, but if we can keep a lot of people and then some of those folks will move to other sectors and work in other sectors, those are the jobs that we need to fill. But our goal is if we can get people landed in rural Canada and not have restrictions such as a cap that prevents us from getting enough people there, raising that cap. I mean, I think before, something like 50% was much more workable and gave us the ability to transition a lot more people through to permanent residency and grow the business and continue to keep those small rural Canadian communities sustainable.
Merci. Et par rapport à ça, des fois,
Thank you very much. Sometimes you hear that we don't want it to be a free-for-all because we don't want too much fraud and we don't want employers to have too much ease to access cheap labor. Obviously, Canadian employers would rather hire Canadians if they could, but they're forced to look abroad. Would you say that's true?
There, you made a comment about cheap labor. I mean, the myth, that's not true. I mean, a lot of these meat plants today, they're unionized, and our plant is unionized as well. So the wages are set for all Canadians and all workers that come into the plant, regardless of which country they come in. So it's not cheap labor. So a new foreign worker that arrives would hire the same as a Canadian that arrived, and as they progress through their skill set and learn those things, they move equally whether you're a Canadian or a worker from overseas. And the other part is when you do bring in a foreign worker, you're burdened with a pile more costs than you would for a Canadian. So the myth that people keep thinking that workers come from overseas is cheap is completely misunderstood. It's very expensive to bring people from overseas. When you've got to pay their flight, you've got to set up their house, you've got to make sure you get all their banking, their SIN numbers and healthcare and all that sort of. There's a huge cost to that.
I would just add, I would just add, Madame, that that's very true. It's not only that, it's mean, for example, in Mr. Dhaliwal's riding, we have seafood processing plants that are probably going to be closed, and most of the folks there have become Canadians or permanent residents, and they're very well paid. So.
Merci beaucoup. Peut-être rapidement.
Thank you very much. Perhaps very quickly, Ms. Lihal, on workers who are victims of fraudsters and who can't move from sector to sector. For instance, maybe we could let workers go work for another employer for, say, 30 days. Would that help workers be more safe and not be hostages to one employer?
The vulnerable workers TRP option and sorry, not TRP, the open work permit option available, but that does take time. So if there was, I hear what you're saying, if there was some immediate measure or step that someone could take to get out, because the processing of that other vulnerable worker route does take time, it would be helpful.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Lehal. Time is up for Madame Normandin. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for the presentation. I'll go to Vilma, please, if I may. Before I get you to sort of finish up what you had to say, I'd like to ask you this first question. With respect to the announcement that the government had made just about 2 weeks ago on the PR process for caregivers, I wonder what your thoughts are, and especially with respect to the question around the cap.
Okay, because the cap for the caregivers, we have 2,750 for home childcare provider. And recently, April 8th, they made an announcement that the cap is almost full and that the IRCC is encouraging caregivers to apply for the new public policy. Unfortunately, this new public policy is very disproportionately distributed because, as you can see, that the 40,000 goes to the international students and the 20,000 goes, and the 20,000 cap, there are 40 different occupations fighting for this stream, and 30,000, 95 different occupations are also fighting for these streams. And you are looking at, if the international student is working as a cashier with a NOC 6611 on stream A, and she's also working as a retail salesperson under stream B, NOC 6421. In reality, all this program qualifies the international students, whereas the caregivers cannot qualify for all these streams. So this is disproportionately distributed, especially to the vulnerable migrant workers. The farm workers, I was talking to the advocates in PEI. The farm workers in PEI, their employment is located too far away from the language testing. And the caregivers in Nunavut, the employment is also far from the language testing. The caregivers has to fly from the employment to the testing center. Nowadays, because of the pandemic, the libraries are closed, the community centers are closed. These migrant workers are living or working in the middle of nowhere. They don't have access to computer, no access to internet, and they are fighting to get into this program. And they are competing with doctors, pharmacists, highly skilled and high tech-savvy people. We're talking about international students who are young people, young professionals. They're working nowadays in organizations or corporations with internet and computer. So also this first in, first out rule. The first in and first out rule for the migrant workers really will exclude in this program, because whoever is in this in the city with all these technologies, they can actually apply right away. When it opens in May 6th, I'm sure that the system will crash. The same announcement, when the announcement was done in April 14th, the following day, the website of IELTS and CELPIP crashed. And when they opened it and restored the website, the next available schedule for IELTS is September, and the next available schedule for CELPIP is December. How can these migrant workers compete with doctors, pharmacists, highly skilled people? obviously, this is not for the migrant workers program.
Thank you. So would you propose then that the government should actually bring in a separate immigration stream for caregivers? Okay.
Yes.
And on that, I know the community's call for land of status on arrival for some time now, and so I wonder if you want to comment on what the permanent program for land of status on arrival for caregivers should look like.
We've been advocating that all those applying from outside, overseas, when they're applying, they should be given a permanent residency upon arrival, because nowadays when applicants from outside they're applying for this program, they will have to wait for 1 year. It should not be the case. And most of the times, these applicants from outside, we never heard of anybody coming into Canada because of the restrictions of the language, education, those criterias. And also, they have to spend more money outside for the educational credentials. They're paying dollars and they're working and earning pesos. So more caregivers are being refused outside, and we don't see anyone coming in Canada as compared to years ago when the LCP is being introduced.
And so with respect to a permanent program, so first the government should provide a permanent residence on arrival program for caregivers with a specific allocation of spots and no requirements for language and all of those things to which the government has put in place, which has now become a barrier. With respect to the people who are here already, the caregivers who are already here, because they now perhaps be difficult for them to compete for the spots that are available with the announcement. What should the government do with respect to those individuals, the caregivers that are already here?
They should open different pathways for them, exclusive for caregivers, because they've been here for so long time and they're still waiting for their permanent residency. And the pathway should be exclusive to caregivers, no cap, and there should be accessible for English language tests should be removed because these are clear barriers
for them.
Sorry
for interrupting, Ms. Pagaduan. Your time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Hallen. Mr. Hallen, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Ms. Wilma, with this caregivers program is something that I, even through my own office, have experienced that it seems like it's so delayed just until this recent announcement even. A lot of people are suffering. Can you speak a little bit more to this 12-month wait period, which seems like a really long time, and it's not very specific on, suppose someone's doesn't have all their documents and they didn't put in the application, or there's something missing. It doesn't specify like where does that 12 months start from or where does it end from. Can you please give a little bit more information on how you see that and what kind of requirements it should have in it?
Actually, that's the same question we asked the former IRCC Minister Ahmed Hussein, because during the announcement of the introduction of the interim pathway and the new program, he said that there's going to be a 1-year processing for these PR applications. So when the interim pathway opens in February 2019 and in the fall, he said that the processing is 1 year. But later on, these caregivers only received their first AOR or acknowledgement of receipts this March of 2019. So where does the 12 months processing start? We don't know, because until now they're still waiting. And they applied 2019 of February, and only AOR they received since March of this year. So the government really has to give attention to the caregivers and the migrant workers, because really, the long separation of the family reunification is not there. The promise of Canada for family reunification is not being addressed, and many caregivers, family are passing because of the COVID, and they have to deal with that issue.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Vilma. Ms. Lehel, you mentioned during your talking that these announcements, what they've been causing is a lot of uncertainty and a bunch of panic from a lot of people, even people who give English tests, they're overwhelmed right now because of just these announcements that come out of nowhere. And it's easier to, we've seen this over and over again where they've thrown a lot, they say we throw a bunch of money into millions and billions of dollars into a program, but I mean, it doesn't really solve the actual issue. You brought up an issue of these consultants who, they can go around when they give cash, they can go around even being caught. How do you see this loophole being fixed? How do you see this that would help the most vulnerable people that come here?
That's the golden question, right? Fixing that's we've been trying that for years. But like I said, some sort of front end approach. What we're trying to do right now is put a lot of money and resources into investigating individuals that we suspect are abusing the system and taking advantage of workers. And so that's a lot of back end stuff now happening after the fact, and then some definitely good work, but it's a lot of time and resources into investigations, and then we'll have trials and court. So what I'm suggesting is something more at the front end along the lines of some kind of matching system. I'd mentioned one of the community organizations suggesting, and again, I don't know if it's doable, but it's a thought, and let's get the thoughts out there, something where the ESDC takes control over perhaps workers that are already in Canada looking for employment and match them up with employers. And we've heard from the agri-industry that they're desperate. They're looking for people, and we have workers that are looking for employers. So is there a possibility to create a system where we can match the two?
Thank you very much for that. And continuing on, Mr. Lael, when we see all these announcements, these 20,000 new or 27,000 new, but at the same time, we're still dealing with all of our offices with these great amounts of backlogs that we're seeing.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Hallen. Your time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Reagan. Mr. Reagan, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Couturier, I think you're in St. John's in Newfoundland. I'm in Nova Scotia right now, but I expect you're probably very familiar with the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. Now, I know that you folks are talking about the importance of an integrated, permanent solution to the issues of labor workforce in agriculture, and I appreciate that, and that may well make it into the committee's report. But let me ask you about the Atlantic Pilot, the Rural Northern Immigration Pilot, and the other pilots that have been in place. Would, in relation to, for instance, with the Atlantic Immigration Pilot, labor market impact assessments not required. Do you feel that should be that kind of idea should be expanded more broadly? And if so, with which partners? Because of course the pilot here is the Atlantic Canada is with the provincial governments. What's your view on that?
Well, I mean, the pilot seems to be working. So if you want to expand it to other partners, other provinces, then I think that would be a good thing, and not just restricted to agri-foods or agriculture.
Well, I guess my question is about, it's with the provinces, right? But should it be with sectors instead, or certain other kinds of organizations in some fashion?
Well, I mean, I guess it could be with ESDC or CART, for example, that represents a sector, or another sort of a group that represents a sector. I mean, if that's the will of the government, then like CART, for example, has great credibility with governments across the sector across all the country. So for agriculture and agri-foods, that would make more sense. And we are supported by ESDC for our research in particular. So I think that's a good idea, Mr. Reagan, that it be some other group takes that on.
Does that model, the current model there, work, or should there be, for example, sector-specific LMIAs? And secondly, of all the various pilot programs, if you were to choose one of them, which one would you like to see become permanent?
Well, I'm going to be biased and say that the agriculture and agri-food, should become permanent. That's the sector I work in, and so does Mr. Chambers, and that's what CART serves across the country. So I would say that would be a good idea. And Ms. Leal mentioned, that ESDC could help. So I just wanted to mention in that context.
Madame la Présidente, je vais devoir faire un rappel au règlement. Il faut tenir le micro un peu plus proche pour l'interprétation.
Pardon.
Merci beaucoup.
Yes, actually, so ESDC could have a sort of job matching program, I guess, in different sectors as well. CARC already has a job matching program for a number of new Canadians and people who are eligible to work. So we could get more involved in that. So, I mean, that's different than the immigration Atlantic pilot, but I'm just saying there are ways of doing this outside of government, I guess, and working with governments.
Thanks very much. I'd ask more, but I have about 10 seconds left. So back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. We will now proceed to Madame Normandin. You will have 2 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Merci beaucoup. Ma question va être pour...
Thank you very much. My question is for Lehal, and if I have time, I'll ask Mr. Couturier and Chambers a question. With regard to training taken by foreign workers, they're actually limited because they only have a work permit, not a study permit, and this would prevent them from perhaps gaining easier access to permanent residency. So should they be allowed to take courses on the outside or some kind of training outside of the work permit?
Pathways require, for example, certain level of English, which I have concerns with because I'm not sure if those levels of English are required in any event. But if that is going to be a criteria at some level, then why not encourage these workers to take on English courses or some other training that will increase their skill set and benefit Canada even further?
Merci beaucoup. Et pour Monsieur Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers, Mr. Couturier. Sometimes people hear, I have this fantastic worker and I'd love this worker to accede to a higher position, but he doesn't have the qualifications and I can't give him those qualifications. So would this be a useful thing for employers as well?
Yes, in actual fact, CARC already has partnerships with certain sectors of the agriculture industry where they can provide that training in many different languages. The employer can provide that training to many different languages to their employees, and whether they're foreign workers or working towards permanency. So we need to build upon that aspect and provide that.
Can you please move your microphone closer to your mouth?
I'm sorry again. It's the yes, we already have those sorts of tools available through CARC for farmers to upgrade the skills and provide those skills to their employees, whether they're Canadian or not, and to help them move up. So that's available in some commodities in the Canadian agriculture sector. So we need to expand that program for sure.
Thank you, Madam Normandin, your time is up. Thank you. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
I only have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to give my time to Vilma to finish up her presentation because I think she had other points that she didn't get a chance to make.
Yeah, I also would like to recommend that the IRCC should have an online application system for the caregiver program. So it will be a lot easier so they can have an AOR right away and hopefully to receive an open work permit as soon as the application is open. Caregivers outside of Canada must have an open work permit and the processing time should be less than a year, approximately 6 months. That's my recommendation. So they can have a life here in Canada as soon as possible. Also, we have an issue with the mailing issue. There's so many applications being lost. And if IRCC would have a global case management system wherein IRCC staff who are working from home will have access to the database everywhere they are in Canada. Also, there are IRCC officers with inconsistency in their decisions in the applications. There are a lot of caregivers who took the exam several times and cannot apply for PR because they could not meet the English language. Now, most of the IRCC officers nowadays during pandemics, they refuse the application and send it directly to the HNC department in Vancouver, before the pandemic, caregivers who are applying under the with the language problem, they apply for PR with a submission, and most officers before the pandemic, they consider the application and send it to London, and most of our applicants are are okay, and they got the PR application approved. But nowadays, during the pandemic, officers forward their applications to agency.
Thank you.
You have 10 seconds.
Well, I just want to say thank you to all the presenters. I think that what we need to do from the government side is actually make some substantive changes and really recognize the value of these temporary foreign workers, especially the caregivers, to give them landed status on arrival.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Thanks to all the witnesses for providing important input to the study we have undertaken. If there is anything you would like to submit in writing, if you were not able to discuss it today because of the lack of time, you can always do that. You can send your written submission to the clerk of the committee, and that will be circulated to all the members. On behalf of all the members, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for giving us the time. I see a hand raised by Ms. Kwan.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Madam Chair, just before we adjourn, I just wonder whether or not if you can advise committee members when we will be looking at the report for the Hong Kong study. We have done and completed that work already, so we should actually get on to writing that report. I see it is not in our schedule that we just received, the updated schedule. And so before we slot too many other witnesses into the LMIA/caregiver study, could you advise when we will be studying?
Yeah, no, I will let you know
that time.
Okay. So I thank all the witnesses for appearing, and before we adjourn, I would just like to provide a clarification in regards to the question which has been raised by Ms. Kwan. We will be receiving the draft report on the Hong Kong mayors on May 14th. So that is the time which the analysts have given to us when the draft report will be circulated to all the members. So once that report is done, then we will schedule the meeting to go through the consideration of the draft report. So I will work on that basis. It was not sorted because we are just waiting for the draft report. So once we have that, that will definitely be put into the calendar. With this, our today's meeting comes to an end. Is it the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting?
Sorry, Madam Speaker, can I just ask one other thing? One of our witnesses, Vilma, had actually asked a number of questions. I think they pertain to IRCC. Is it possible for committee members to receive those answers so that we actually know what the answers are related to those questions as we consider the work of this study?
Can I ask the clerk, is that possible?
If I understand correctly, Ms. Kwan, you're asking if the questions raised by Ms. Pagaduan today will be responded to by IRCC to the committee?
Yeah, if we could submit those questions to IRCC so we can get the response to the questions that she raised as we consider the study.
If I could propose, once the blues for today's meetings are published, I can extract the questions raised by Ms. Pagaduan and bring them to your attention. And if you're in agreement with the wording, then I would be happy to forward them to IRCC and ask if they'd be able to provide written responses to the committee.
That would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Ms. Kwan, thanks for raising this question. I would get a clarification whether that is possible or not, like that, whether the witnesses can request the IRCC to provide some information. I will definitely look into it and provide further clarification when we meet next time. Okay, do I have the will of the committee to adjourn the meeting?
Yes,
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.